Your numbers do not match our official records, Brenda Higgins from Human Resources said, her tone colder than the chill radiating from the conference room air conditioning vent. She slid a thick stack of termination documents across the polished, dark oak table. We have reason to believe you have been systematically falsifying your quarterly client acquisition results for quite some time. My direct supervisor, Rodney Gable, leaned forward in his leather executive chair, a poorly disguised expression of artificial sympathy lingering on his face. We conducted a thorough internal audit of the institutional client reports. Ed, the discrepancies between your reported figures and company records are significant and unacceptable. I sat motionless, staring down at the bold black font on the severance contract. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained completely steady on my lap. 6 years, 6 relentless years of arriving at 6:30 in the morning, staying long after the custodial crew began their evening rounds, sacrificing weekend golf games, and missing family milestone dinners to build Crestview Financial Partners into a regional powerhouse. Sign the agreement and exit the premises quietly, without making a scene, Brenda continued, uncapping a heavy silver fountain pen and placing it precisely beside the signature line. We are prepared to offer you 2 weeks of severance pay if you cooperate fully and relinquish all internal access immediately. The executive boardroom fell silent, save for the low, rhythmic hum of the ventilation ceiling units. Rodney shifted uncomfortably, his gold watch band clinking against his crystal water glass as he avoided direct eye contact. Brenda maintained her impassioned professional posture, well practiced in the cold art of dismantling veteran careers without triggering corporate liability. I took a deep, controlled breath, feeling the tension drain from my upper back as a profound sense of clarity washed over me. Then, I let out a faint smile. Before I affix my signature to anything, I said calmly, retrieving my smartphone from my jacket pocket, let me show you something that might alter your perspective. The sudden flash of confusion on their faces was merely the opening movement of what would become the most satisfying professional turning point of my life. My name is Edward Hoffman. I am 49 years old, and until that freezing Tuesday morning, I served as a senior client relationship manager at a top-tier institutional financial brokerage. I am the son of a high school principal who lost his career 30 years ago after being framed in an administrative budget scandal because he possessed no independent proof to defend his honor. From my father's bitter defeat, I learned an indispensable principle early in my adult life. In corporate America, meticulous documentation is not merely good practice, it is your ultimate armor. Sitting across from 2 executives who genuinely believed they possessed absolute leverage, who assumed a veteran employee would crumble into quiet panic and sign away his rights, I unlocked my device and brought up a securely encrypted cloud folder. 3 quarters ago, I noticed subtle inconsistencies in our monthly portfolio summaries, I explained, turning the high-resolution display toward them. The raw performance figures I submitted at the end of each payroll cycle were systematically declining by the time official quarterly reviews were published. Initially, I suspected an automated database glitch or an uncalibrated software update. Rodney's left eyelid gave a nervous twitch. He crossed his arms tightly against his chest, attempting to maintain an air of detached authority. As a detail-oriented professional who manages multi-million-dollar institutional portfolios, I habituated myself to blind copying every daily submission report and raw transaction manifest to a secure personal cloud server. It was a fail-safe routine I established years ago after witnessing how easily digital records can be altered when office politics turn toxic. Brenda immediately sat upright, her posture stiffening. Exporting proprietary firm analytics to an external personal server constitutes a direct violation of our corporate information security protocol. Section 4.3, she stated sharply, attempting to regain control of the dialogue, which contains a specific explicit exception for personal performance logs maintained by senior personnel for annual compensation review purposes. I countered smoothly, cutting off her sentence. I verified that exact clause with institutional compliance when I accepted my senior appointment 6 years ago. I tapped the tablet screen to display a detailed side-by-side comparison spreadsheet. This file represents an immutable chronological log of every unauthorized edit performed on my client acquisition files over the past 8 months. The mathematical pattern is remarkable. My verified client acquisition metrics were systematically reduced by exactly 17% each month, while Bradford Thornton's metrics experienced a corresponding 17% increase. Bradford Thornton was a 32-year-old junior associate who had been promoted over 3 senior managers 3 months ago, despite possessing half my industry experience and less than 40% of my verified deal conversion rate. Bradford was also Rodney's regular weekend golfing partner, and his uncle sat on our corporate board of directors. "I am genuinely curious, Rodney," I continued, keeping my voice level and unhurried as adrenaline coursed through my veins. "Is it a pure statistical coincidence that these mysterious data modifications commenced the precise week you assumed control of our division? Or that 4 other veteran relationship managers in our unit experienced identical unexplained drops in their quarterly numbers over the exact same period?" The color drained entirely from Rodney's face. Brenda's rigid professional mask slipped for a split second, revealing genuine alarm as she glanced sideways at the vice president. "These are extraordinarily damaging allegations, Edward," she said, her voice noticeably lacking its previous icy confidence. "They are not mere allegations, Brenda," I replied firmly. "They are documented digital facts. I have cataloged every original submission timestamp, verified server log screenshots, and most importantly, the specific administrative user credentials utilized to execute every alteration." I opened another technical report on the screen. This timestamped audit log demonstrates that every metric reduction was executed using your primary administrative login, Rodney. Always between 7:15 and 7:40, on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, during the exact hours you claim to be staying late for mandatory system maintenance. The silence inside the boardroom became oppressive. Rodney opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I continued without interruption. "I also possess written statements from 4 senior colleagues who suffered identical performance downgrades under your management. None of the junior staff in your inner circle encountered these unexplained metric adjustments." Rodney's face contorted into a mask of sudden rage. "You cannot prove any of this ridiculous nonsense," he snapped, his hands trembling slightly on the mahogany table surface. "I already have," I replied calmly, taking a small silver USB drive from my briefcase and placing it beside the unsigned severance contract. "The complete forensic data package is saved right here. Furthermore, 30 minutes before walking into this conference room, I transmitted identical encrypted copies to Karen Channing in the corporate ethics office and Howard Ellison in legal counsel." I leaned back into my chair, looking Rodney directly in the eyes. "I did not enter this room to be terminated today, Rodney. I came here to watch you attempt it." The following 3 hours inside the executive suite unfolded in a whirlwind of high-stakes corporate friction. Howard Ellison from legal counsel arrived first, his face grim as he carried a thick leather binder containing company compliance guidelines. Karen Channing from ethics entered immediately behind him, accompanied by a senior IT forensic specialist who carried a dedicated diagnostic laptop. Shortly thereafter, the regional managing director joined via a secure encrypted video feed from his home office in Chicago, his vacation schedule abruptly interrupted by a crisis that threatened to engulf the entire regional division. Throughout the grueling interrogation, I remained entirely composed, systematically presenting raw transaction logs, cross-referencing server timestamps, and demonstrating the precise digital mechanism Rodney had employed to siphon my performance figures to pad Bradford Thornton's record. The cumulative weight of 6 years of unyielding dedication, of quiet late nights spent analyzing market trends while lesser qualified political operatives advanced around me, solidified into an airtight presentation of corporate misconduct. "How did you first identify the systematic variance in your acquisition figures?" Howard Ellison asked, pushing his reading glasses up his nose as he carefully examined the side-by-side transaction manifests on my tablet. "I have maintained a personal double-entry ledger of every client onboarding agreement since my first month with Crestview," I explained. "Every institutional deposit, every wire confirmation, every fee schedule. When my quarterly review statements began reflecting volume figures significantly lower than my verified bank deposit receipts, I initiated a forensic comparison. Once I confirmed the variance was not a calculation error, I began tracking the digital audit trail. And your position is that this data manipulation was intentionally carried out to create a paper trail justifying Mr. Thornton's accelerated promotion over senior staff. Karen Channing clarified, her pen moving quickly across her notepad. The evidence demonstrates a consistent, deliberate strategy, I answered, and it was not restricted to my portfolio. Laura Jennings in healthcare institutional funds, Sandra Miller in retirement services, Nadia Brooks in estate planning, and Valerie Owens in commercial lending all experienced identical performance declines under Rodney's supervision. Every single one of them was subsequently bypassed for senior promotions that were awarded to junior associates aligned with Rodney's political faction. The regional managing director's voice resonated clearly through the conference room speakers. Edward, on behalf of executive leadership, I want to express our deepest regret for what clearly appears to be an egregious breach of our corporate governance standards. We will immediately initiate a comprehensive internal investigation. I nodded politely, though decades in corporate finance had taught me to view executive promises with healthy skepticism. Corporate investigations could easily be drawn out over months, findings diluted, and uncomfortable facts buried behind non-disclosure agreements and quiet financial settlements. I appreciate your statement, sir, I responded carefully. However, I must also highlight that I have completed an exhaustive audit of the direct financial losses resulting from these altered metrics over the past 3 quarters. The performance bonus is tied to metrics I actually achieved, but was denied credit for total exactly $47,000 in lost compensation for my account alone. I paused, allowing the weight of that figure to settle across the room before continuing. When you calculate the cumulative bonus, withholding across all 5 targeted senior managers, Crestview is facing an intentional, documented pattern of systemic compensation fraud and performance manipulation. That is a regulatory issue that state financial authorities and institutional oversight boards would examine with extreme scrutiny. The room grew visibly tense. Rodney looked as though he might be physically ill, his hands gripped tightly around his water glass. Brenda was frantically typing messages on her phone underneath the table margin. Howard Ellison cleared his throat loudly, turning to address the room. I recommend we immediately suspend this meeting and excuse Mr. Gable and Miss Higgins while legal counsel confers privately with Mr. Hoffman. As Rodney and Brenda were instructed to leave the boardroom, Rodney paused near the doorway. For a brief second, our eyes locked. The executive, who had systematically undermined my work, who had built his professional standing by stealing the fruits of my labor, who had undoubtedly assumed an older manager would quietly surrender to corporate pressure, flinched under my gaze and looked away first. That evening, I sat on the quiet patio of my suburban home with a dark mug of coffee, watching the twilight settle over the neighborhood. My personal phone vibrated repeatedly with discreet text messages from colleagues who had caught wind of the executive emergency meeting. I answered none of them. This evening belonged to quiet reflection. I wanted to absorb the stillness before the inevitable structural storm broke over the firm on Monday. Monday morning arrived with a palpable change in workplace climate. Security personnel greeted me respectfully at the main entrance tower, but instead of directing me toward my standard division floor, they escorted me directly to the executive top floor, a level I had visited only twice in 6 years. Executive Board Director Evelyn Caldwell was waiting inside her private suite. Her office was stark, modern, and devoid of vanity awards or ostentatious luxury. She gestured toward a plush armchair facing her desk. "Edward," she began, examining me with keen analytical eyes. "I spent the entire weekend reviewing the forensic data files you submitted to Legal and Ethics. The evidence is irrefutable." I sat quietly, maintaining a composed demeanor as I waited for her to lay out the executive position. "I built this firm 30 years ago, on the foundation of uncompromised integrity," Evelyn continued, letting out a tired sigh. "We built our reputation on rewarding verifiable results rather than corporate politics. It is painfully evident that our internal oversight mechanisms failed to prevent toxic leadership from taking root in your division. With all due respect, Miss Caldwell, I replied steadily. Principles without rigorous enforcement are merely decorative words on a lobby wall. A subtle, approving smile appeared on her face. That is precisely why I requested this private meeting with you today. Rodney Gable has been summarily terminated for cause. Brenda Higgins has been suspended pending the final outcome of the compliance audit. Bradford Thornton's promotion has been officially revoked, and his past submissions are undergoing independent audit. She slid a thick beige folder across her desk. This is our executive proposal to rectify the situation completely. It includes full back pay for all withheld performance bonuses, an immediate promotion to Director of Client Strategy, and a permanent seat on our newly established Executive Ethics and Compensation Committee. I opened the document folder and carefully read the terms. The financial compensation figures and equity grants included were substantial, exceeding what I had calculated for my lost bonuses. Why offer me an executive leadership position instead of a substantial financial settlement to quietly depart? I asked directly. A quiet departure would be far less disruptive to corporate optics. Evelyn's expression hardened with conviction. Because quiet settlements are what cowards use to hide structural failures. Covering up corrupt management only guarantees that another predator will repeat the cycle. I do not want you to leave Crestview, Edward. I want your meticulous standards integrated into our corporate structure to ensure this behavior is hunted down and eradicated across every department. I evaluated her words carefully, thinking not only of my own career, but of the other senior managers who had been silenced under Rodney's regime. Equal compensation adjustments and bonus reconciliations are being finalized for Ms. Jennings, Ms. Miller, Ms. Brooks, and Ms. Owens, Evelyn added. And I want you to lead the design of an automated tamper-proof reporting architecture that prevents record manipulation from ever occurring again. Standing in that executive suite, I realized that my original goal of defending my own livelihood had transformed into something far greater. I had walked into that boardroom 3 days earlier, prepared for a bitter legal fight. I had not anticipated a complete executive mandate to reform the firm. Looking down at the agreement, I knew this was not the conclusion of my battle. It was the foundation of a lasting institutional legacy. The subsequent 3 months were marked by intense, systematic operational restructuring. I relocated to a corner office on the executive floor, recruited a dedicated team of systems analysts, and commenced an exhaustive forensic audit of historical performance records across all regional branches. Our deep dive investigation uncovered 7 additional cases of metric manipulation in distant regional offices. In every instance, senior managers with stellar client retention records had been quietly downgraded, while junior operatives connected to executive networks received unearned bonuses and rapid promotions. Bradford Thornton tendered his resignation 4 days before his formal ethics review was scheduled to begin. Industry rumors suggested he had managed to secure a junior position at a competing brokerage firm in another state. I wondered briefly if he would attempt to replicate his manipulative habits under new management, or if being publicly exposed had taught him a humbling lesson about corporate survival. Ultimately, I realized his future trajectory was irrelevant to my purpose. The transparent reporting system my team engineered was remarkably elegant. Performance metrics and client acquisition data were locked into an immutable, distributed digital ledger system that recorded every transaction entry in real time. Any subsequent administrative modification automatically generated a permanent audit trail, flagging the exact user ID, workstation location, and justification notes while instantly sending an automated notification to the employee whose record was altered. Mandatory quarterly compliance algorithms swept the database continuously, flagging anomalous modification patterns that targeted specific demographics or senior pay grades. One rainy Thursday afternoon, as I was reviewing the deployment timeline for our Midwest offices, Laura Jennings from Healthcare Funds knocked gently on my open door. She stepped into the office holding a folder of newly reconciled quarterly statements. I honestly believed no one in senior management would ever listen to us, she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I was actively preparing to resign 6 months ago when my acquisition figures kept coming back lower than my bank transfer logs. I understand that weight completely, Laura, I answered, gesturing for her to take a seat. For nearly a year, I found myself questioning my own memory and math, wondering if age was dulling my edge. Where did you find the absolute resolve to confront them directly? She asked, looking at me with genuine curiosity. I thought of my father, I shared quietly. He was an honorable school administrator who lost his life work 30 years ago because he could not produce tangible evidence when a corrupt superintendent altered his evaluation wind files. He spent the rest of his life in quiet bitterness. When I saw Rodney manipulating our figures, I vowed that I would never allow a corporate bully to steal my life work or force me into quiet surrender. Laura nodded slowly, a look of profound relief washing over her face. Thank you, Ed. You did not just save your own career. You changed the culture of this entire firm for all of us. After she left, I leaned back in my chair, looking out over the city skyline. The true sweet essence of corporate revenge was not found in watching Rodney Gable get escorted from the building by security. Satisfying though that moment had been, real revenge lay in constructing an unassailable system that protected honest, hard-working professionals from enduring the same psychological warfare. True justice does not end with punishing the wrongdoer. It requires fixing the broken framework that enabled their corruption in the first place. 6 months after the boardroom showdown, I stood at the main podium of our annual National Leadership Conference in Dallas, presenting our transparent performance framework to over 800 branch managers and financial directors from across the nation. As I demonstrated how our automated ledger eliminated hidden metric adjustments and ensured absolute equity in compensation, I spotted Evelyn Caldwell standing near the back of the auditorium, nodding in strong agreement. When I concluded my address, Evelyn walked up onto the main stage to join me at the microphone. What Edward Hoffman has designed is not merely a compliance dashboard, she announced to the filled auditorium. It is a masterclass in institutional integrity, and it was forged by a leader who had every reason to walk away from our firm, but chose instead to stand his ground and make us better. The room erupted into prolonged applause, but the most meaningful validation arrived in the hard operational metrics recorded over the following year. Internal promotions based on objective performance data increased by 34% across all regional branches. The compensation equity gap narrowed to near zero, and turnover among veteran relationship managers dropped to an all-time low. For myself, I discovered that professional excellence paired with unyielding documentation is indeed the ultimate form of success. However, the corporate ecosystem rarely accepts fundamental disruption without striking back. 9 months after his public termination, Rodney Gable launched a desperate counteroffensive. He filed a legal lawsuit against Crestview Financial Partners and named me personally as a co-defendant, alleging wrongful termination, defamation, and a malicious conspiracy to destroy his executive reputation. He demanded $3.8 million in compensatory and punitive damages, claiming I had fabricated the digital evidence to engineer his removal and fast-track my own executive promotion. When the legal summons was served at my office, my reaction surprised even myself. I felt neither anxiety nor anger. Instead, a profound sense of calm settled over me. This lawsuit was Rodney's final, desperate attempt to rewrite history and play the victim after his corrupt empire crumbled. Our legal defense team was supremely confident. His lawsuit is completely meritless. Howard Ellison assured me during our prep session. Our technical documentation is airtight. The server logs cannot be altered retroactively, and 5 senior managers have provided sworn affidavits corroborating your findings. Nevertheless, civil litigation is an exhausting process designed to drain your energy and resolve. For 3 grueling months, I endured endless depositions inside cold law firm conference rooms. Rodney's aggressive defense attorneys grilled me for hours, attempting to twist my meticulous log-keeping into evidence of a paranoid, vindictive master plan. They painted me as an aging manager who used technical trickery to sabotage a rising executive. During a particularly hostile deposition session in mid-November, Rodney sat directly across the conference table from me, flanked by his legal team. His lead attorney leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension as he fired off another rapid question. Mr. Hoffman, why did you feel compelled to maintain an independent, off-site record of your daily work files if you were not actively planning to use them as leverage against your superiors? I adjusted my jacket, looked past the attorney, and stared directly into Rodney Gable's eyes. I learned the necessity of documentation from my father, I replied, my voice echoing clearly across the quiet room. He dedicated 22 years of his life to public education as a high school principal. When he exposed financial irregularities in his district, a corrupt superintendent altered his annual performance evaluations to justify firing him. My father lacked server logs and digital audit trails. He lost his job, his pension, and his professional reputation overnight. Rodney shifted uncomfortably in his chair, attempting to maintain a stoic expression as I continued. My father passed away years later, carrying the unearned shame of a ruined career. He taught me that when corporate structures are manipulated by powerful individuals to protect their own greed, meticulous documentation is not leverage. It is a working man's absolute defense. I did not log my data to destroy Rodney Gable. I logged my data because I knew how fragile an employee's career becomes when corrupt executives abuse their authority. The deposition room fell completely silent. The opposing attorney sat with his mouth slightly open, unable to formulate an immediate follow-up question. Rodney looked down at his legal notepad, unable to meet my gaze. 2 weeks after that deposition transcript was finalized, Rodney Gable quietly withdrew his $3.8 million lawsuit in its entirety, agreeing to bear all his own legal expenses. The final structural triumph of this journey unfolded 1 year later. Evelyn Caldwell invited me to step into an expanded executive role as chair of the Global Corporate Ethics and Systemic Governance Board. In this capacity, I was empowered to ensure that our transparent operational standards were permanently codified into the company charter, making them immune to future executive turnover. At my inaugural board meeting, I proposed a revolutionary policy, publicly releasing our internal performance equity metrics to clients, institutional investors, and regulatory bodies annually. Internal transparency should not stop at our corporate front doors, I argued before the board. If we truly believe in the integrity of our management systems, we should welcome external audit and public scrutiny. The board debate was intense, lasting over 4 hours as traditional directors voiced concerns regarding competitive exposure and regulatory overreach. However, when the final paper ballots were tallied, 72% of the board voted in favor of my proposal. 6 months later, Crestview published the industry's first comprehensive systemic accountability report alongside our annual financial statements. The market response was extraordinary. Major financial journals published glowing features on our corporate governance model. Regulatory bodies cited our transparent reporting structure as a national benchmark. And most importantly, institutional clients responded with unprecedented trust, transferring over $200 million in new managed assets to our firm within 2 quarters. 3 major competitor firms have since initiated similar transparency protocols to remain competitive. Integrity had become our greatest commercial advantage. 18 months after that fateful morning in the conference room, I received a cold email from a senior manager named Daniel Mercer at a large technology firm in California. He wrote that he had reviewed our public accountability white paper while researching how to combat metric manipulation in his own firm, where he suspected senior leadership was altering sales figures to deny bonuses to veteran staff. I spent over an hour on the phone with Daniel that evening, outlining the exact technical steps required to establish immutable audit logs, secure raw transaction receipts, and construct an irrefutable legal defense package. As I listened to his tone shift from quiet despair to renewed confidence, I realized that the ripple effect of my stand was extending far beyond the walls of Crestview. Standing up to corporate corruption is never merely about settling a personal score. My fight with Rodney Gable was never just about saving my own position. It became about transforming an entire workplace ecosystem so that no honest professional would ever have to endure the humiliation of being framed for another man's greed. If you are currently sitting at your desk, Watching a corrupt manager undermine your work, questioning your own worth as office politics chip away at your career. Remember this lesson. Document everything meticulously. Maintain your independent records off-site. Verify your data timestamps, and remain patient. When the moment comes to present your receipts, stand firm and let the truth speak with absolute precision. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is not merely destroying your adversary. It is building a world where their kind can no longer survive. Looking back over the full trajectory of these events, I realize that true victory in corporate life is measured by the permanent structural changes you leave behind. The immediate aftermath of exposing Rodney Gable was undeniably satisfying, watching the smug's confidence drain from his face as digital audit logs proved. His guilt was a moment I will treasure for the rest of my days. But the long-term impact of that morning has proven infinitely more rewarding. In the 2 years following our corporate overhaul, Crestview Financial Partners transformed from a standard regional brokerage plagued by internal fiefdoms into an industry titan, celebrated for absolute transparency. The reporting system we engineered eliminated the hidden shadows where political favoritism once thrived. Relationship managers no longer spend their evenings worrying whether their hard-earned figures will be shaved down to fund a executive's favored protege. They focus on delivering exceptional value to clients, knowing that their compensation and advancement are protected by immutable digital ledgers. Our quarterly performance reports are now subject to continuous automated verification. Every metric modification, every fee adjustment, and every portfolio rebalancing action is permanently burned into a secure ledger that cannot be altered retroactively by anyone. Not by branch managers, not by HR directors, and not by the CEO herself. This absolute accountability has fostered an environment of profound professional trust. Staff retention across all age brackets has reached unprecedented levels, and our recruitment channels are flooded with top-tier talent, eager to work in an environment where merit is absolute. Rodney Gable's post-Crestview trajectory served as a stark caution to those who build careers on deceit. After withdrawing his baseless lawsuit, he attempted to launch an independent financial consultancy firm. However, in an industry where reputation and transparency have become paramount, his past conduct at Crestview preceded him. Institutional clients avoided his firm, and within 14 months, his business ceased operations. Last I heard, he was working as a mid-level contract analyst for a minor firm, stripped of the executive authority he had so egregiously abused. Bradford Thornton similarly discovered that unearned promotions provide a fragile foundation for a career, without Rodney's administrative manipulation to inflate his metrics. His true performance levels were exposed at his new firm. Unable to meet his basic client acquisition quotas, he was quietly released within a year and has since left the financial services sector entirely. Meanwhile, the senior managers who suffered under Rodney's regime have thrived. Laura Jennings was recently elevated to Vice President of Healthcare Institutional Assets, leading a team that has expanded client portfolios by 45%. Sandra Miller, Nadia Brooks, and Valerie Owens have all stepped into senior executive roles, using their positions to mentor rising talent and enforce the highest standards of corporate ethics. My own role as chair of the Global Corporate Ethics Board has allowed me to speak at international business summits and executive leadership forums across the country. I frequently address roomfuls of corporate leaders, explaining how transparent metric tracking and decentralized record verification eliminate systemic fraud while driving record profitability. Executives who once viewed transparency as a liability now view it as their single greatest competitive asset. On a personal level, the greatest gift of this journey has been a sense of profound peace regarding my father's memory. For decades, the memory of his unjust termination hung over my family like a dark shadow, a reminder of how easily an honorable man's life work can be erased when corrupt superiors hold all the administrative keys. By taking a stand at Crestview and building an unassailable system of accountability, I fulfilled a promise I made to myself as a young man, that his sacrifice would not be in vain, and that his son would prove that truth and documentation can defeat corporate corruption. Every morning, when I walk onto the executive floor at Crestview, I passed the main conference room, where Rodney Gable and Brenda Higgins once tried to ambush me with an unsigned severance agreement. The heavy oak table is still there, but the atmosphere inside that room, and throughout this entire company, has been permanently altered. Power no longer resides with those who manipulate numbers in the dark. It belongs to those who document the truth in the light. To every mid-career professional navigating the complex, sometimes treacherous waters of modern corporate life, never allow yourself to be intimidated by executive titles or corporate posture. Your integrity is your ultimate currency, and your documentation is your indestructible shield. When you perform your duties with excellence and keep impeccable receipts, no corrupt manager can ever steal your legacy. Thank you for following my story. If this journey resonated with your own professional experiences, please like this video, share it with a colleague who needs encouragement, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dive analyses into corporate strategy, executive accountability, and workplace revenge. Remember, the best revenge is not merely defeating your enemies. It is building an honorable legacy that outlasts them entirely.